Hello. Hello. Welcome back from the lunch break. How did it went? Pretty well, right? From your faces, we're heading to the end of the summit. We're heading to the end of this 2025 OECD Global Roundtable on equal access to justice. But before that, we are resuming today with a very important session. So, for myself, I've been the co-lead organizer, so to say, from the side of Spain for this summit. And it's been an incredible year working with the OECD, I must say. It's amazing to see how one of these international organizations manages so much knowledge that at any given moment can help so many countries. Because of that, the session that we're having right now is, for me, one of the most important ones. I'll have the pleasure to actually be part of it. And the session is how to implement this OECD recommendation on access to justice and people-centered justice systems. For that, I would like to invite the moderator, Marianne Piccini Barbieri, to come to the stage and introduce the rest of the speakers. Thank you, Marianne.
I hope everyone can hear me well. So, as announced by Alejandro, let's start our session now on the implementation of the OECD recommendation on access to justice and people-centered justice systems. Please bear with us. It's the third day of this huge event we're organizing in an afternoon, so it might be a bit painful. We're heading towards the end of the event. Stay with us a bit more. And with that, I would like to call to the stage Maaike de Langen, my manager and my mentor, Senior Policy Advisor at the OECD. Liam Cohen, my counterpart in the Irish government, Department of Justice, Home Affairs and Migration. My other counterpart, Alejandro Fernández Muñoz, from the Office of the Director General for Digital Transformation of Justice here in the Ministry of Justice, kindly hosting this event. And last but not least, my dearest colleague and counterpart from the SG Reform, Alexandra Marhova Diaz-Chiappetta, Policy Officer at the SG Reform at the European Commission. So just to set a bit the scene before I pass the floor also to my other colleague at the OECD in terms of this session. As you know already, we have been talking a lot about the OECD recommendation, so it's not something new. In 2023, the OECD Council approved the OECD recommendation on access to justice and people-centered justice systems with the aim to support our member countries and other adherents to enhance access to justice and also put in place core elements of people-centered justice in justice policy reforms. The recommendation materializes 10 years of very hard work of my team, of Tatiana Teplova, and benefited from extensive consultation process with our member countries, with other stakeholders from the justice sector, and at the end, this culminated with 38 member countries signing for this legal instrument called the OECD recommendation, and also having adhered by the European Union. Just to contextualize a bit the discussions, as this will be kind of setting the tone also for the country's experience that we'll be sharing here, and also the OECD presentation. This legal instrument recommends that the adherents develop a people-centered approach by establishing a people-centered justice purpose and culture in the justice sector as an underlying foundation. Also, as a second pillar of the recommendation, designing and delivering people-centered services that are accessible, effective, and responsive to legal needs and justice problems of people, meaning, for example, delivering services that are within the reach of everyone, regardless their geographical location or their preferred channels of accessing these services. The third pillar, establishing a governance infrastructure that enables people-centered justice, including strengthening coordination and cooperation mechanisms across government, across agencies and the sector, promoting digital transformation across just sectors, supporting efficiency and so on. The fourth pillar on empowering people, both from the just sector workforce, but also more broadly in society, through consultation, information, and literacy. And the fifth pillar of the recommendation, committing to participatory and evidence-based planning, monitoring, and evaluation. So all this to say, and then as part of this legal instrument, and the reason why we are actually here today is precisely as part of this exercise that this legal instrument calls, of implementing the recommendation, taking stock on what has been done so far, what countries are doing, and what else can be done in order to get closer to what this legal instrument pushes for. Last but not least, the legal instrument also includes as activities that need to take place having global policy dialogues, like this roundtable, developing guidance, indicators, implementation toolkit, developing data standards and definitions to monitor the implementation of the recommendation. And ultimately, in 2028, this is something that we need to report to our council, to our member countries, on what has been done so far and how much the countries were able to advance on that. With that said, I would like now to pass the floor to Maaike de Langen, who's going to present a bit more in detail what we have been doing so far, some of our instruments, additional instruments, to provide a bit of more context before we have our countries and our European Commission discussing a bit more. Maaike, over to you.
Thank you, Marianne. Hello, everyone. Hello again, I should say. It's been great to have you with us these past days. In this final session, you will hear about implementing the recommendation, but a lot of that has already been on display. On the first day, yesterday, this morning, and even in the session after this, different components of that work will come together. So I am trying to... Oh, that's not the right presentation. That was the presentation of this morning. I'm not sure we can see if we can get the right presentation for you on the screen. But I can speak without the presentation as well. I will, so Marianne introduced the recommendation, which by now you all know, and we just wanted to, in this session, go through the different ways that the OECD can support countries to implement that recommendation. The recommendation defines the global standard, but you can also look at it as a roadmap, a set of actions that governments can take, and the OECD stands ready to support all our member countries and also non-member countries to support the implementation. So we have a set of tools for better policy and practices. You've all heard the Deputy Secretary General mention the toolkit. We've developed a toolkit. It's out in the foyer for those of you who haven't seen it. And that offers practical guidance for member countries and non-member countries to implement policies and to improve their practices in the sector. So that's the pillar on tools for better policy and practices. The second pillar is data and benchmarking, and a third pillar is country-specific reviews and support. And together, these different pillars create a coherent system of support, translating principles to practice, translating data to policy, and bringing national reform together in an international context to learn from one another. So the implementation toolkit really operationalizes the principles of the recommendation that Marianne just set out and helps countries move from the why to the how. It was developed through OECD roundtables like this one in the past years, through a series of workshops that we held, and through country consultations. And it will be a living document. So we will publish the toolkit online and then complement it with other practices. So many of you have shared practices here. Many countries have reported to our country questionnaire. We will harvest those best practices from those different contributions and bring them into the toolkit so it can be a living document that can inspire people. Within the toolkit, you will see that each pillar includes self-assessment questions, checklists, priority actions, and good practices that I already mentioned. And the aim is really to enable governments to diagnose their own justice sector, what are their strengths, what are the gaps, and use that analysis to prioritize reforms based on both the evidence, the things we know, the things we don't know, and also the fiscal reality of the countries. All with the goal, of course, to design policies that are affordable, effective, and people-centered. We've also published, presented to you the rule of law report. This is also an example of that first pillar of support, developing policies and tools for implementation. The rule of law report is entitled Making Justice Systems More Effective and People-Centered, Advancing a Responsive Rule of Law. And it puts people-centered justice in the broader context of democracy and public governance, connecting it also to economic growth and inclusive societies. It analyzes and emphasizes the importance of trust and public institutions and improving the quality of relationships between people, within communities, and between people and their governments. It complements the recommendation on 4 key dimensions. Leadership in the justice sector. We've heard an excellent panel on that yesterday at the end of the day, on the collaboration between the judiciary and the executive. It also analyzes in more detail empowerment and the prevention of justice problems and what can be done in those areas. It identifies justice pathways and services and how to make them more people-centered. And it analyzes administrative justice as an interface of where people encounter the public institutions, justice institutions, and the rule of law in their daily lives. We have many other tools and frameworks that are available on our website. We have the Child-Friendly Justice Framework. We have a paper that was also launched here on access to justice for SMEs. We also have publications that have been launched in the previous roundtables on the Data Governance Framework, the Online Dispute Resolution Framework, and practical tools on more practical tools are forthcoming on the recommendation. I also want to mention the report Governing with AI, which I think is particularly relevant in light of the discussions that we had yesterday. We were all, I think, shaken up in our thinking about using artificial intelligence in the justice sector, and our report on Governing with AI brings together a whole set of use cases from across the public sector, including the justice sector. And I do think I now have my presentation. So this is what I was trying to show you, the 3 pillars, tools for better policy and practices, data and benchmarking, and country-specific reviews and support. So I will click through the ones for the first pillar, because I've spoken to those. The toolkit, what's inside the toolkit, the rule of law report, and some of the other tools that we have. And I now want to turn to the second pillar, which is the second type of support. Oh, no. Yes, this one, sorry. Which is the second type of support that we offer in the area of data and benchmarking. We just had an earlier breakout session focusing on measuring performance in the justice sector. And a lot of the work we do in that area is grounded in legal needs surveys, which remain central tools to capture people's experiences and unmet legal needs and unresolved justice problems, and identify what people experience on their pathways to resolution and how they experience the interactions, the actions they take, the actions they don't take, and try to understand better why that happens. This is grounded in the report that you see on the slide in our guidance for legal needs surveys and access to justice, which was published in 2019 and remains an international cornerstone for conducting legal needs surveys in many countries. Of course, the field has evolved, and we integrate some of the more recent best practices as we work with countries. The proposed measurement framework that you see in the right-hand corner is a measurement framework that the OECD has developed, or is developing, I should say, together with partners, including World Justice Project and Hill. We had a more detailed breakout session, which I summarized in plenary, so I won't go into that in too much detail, but this framework provides the foundation for when we work with countries to have a holistic understanding of the justice sector, connecting the outcomes at the highest level to the service level and people's experience, and then what governments can do to improve that. The third type and final type of support that we offer is country-specific reviews and support. So we work mostly with ministries of justice and judiciaries, many of whom are here, and other actors to design and implement reforms. This includes people-centered justice scans or in-depth reviews that can help map the ecosystem and assess institutional performance. We can identify key reform priorities and co-design practical recommendations. So as many of you know, the recommendation really takes a broad understanding of the justice sector, identifies a range of actors that need to collaborate and cooperate. So in our projects, we try to integrate those elements of co-creation and co-design. I will not go into too much detail, but we have ongoing projects with Ukraine, with Moldova. We have analytical work ongoing on the cause of justice problems with Canada, Colombia, Indonesia, and hopefully soon also with South Africa. We are starting to do a people-centered justice scan in Thailand, and we're working on a regional analysis of access to justice for SMEs in the MENA region. This is a project that we will be hearing a little bit more about in this session, so I will keep it very brief, but this is a project, a joint project with the Ministries of Justice of Ireland, Italy, Malta, and the Netherlands, funded by SG Reform, and it's a good example of the type of support that we can offer. The final slide is just to highlight also the work that we've been doing on digital transformation and data-driven justice. And we've done projects with, in past years with Latvia, Morocco, and Portugal that focus specifically on digital transformation and data-driven justice. And we will be developing that more in the coming years also, of course, to include some of the latest ideas and latest experiences about using artificial intelligence. So to wrap it up, those are the three types of support that we are happy to offer. All of them are co-created and co-designed, tailored to the national context, and building from international experiences, and also connecting for peer learning between countries. With that, back to you, Marianne.
Thank you very much, Micah. So linking to some of the points that you mentioned here, Mike, in terms of country support and also data and evidence, and I would like to maybe pass the floor to some of our countries to share some of the work they have been doing, also some of their agenda on justice sector transformation, and how they have been advancing on the agenda of people-centered justice. So first, I'd like to, Liam, call you. We have, it seems that feels like it was yesterday we were in Dublin on that mission.
Well, it was only last week, so.
It was only last week, but such a long week. And very intense days where we met over 100 stakeholders across the justice sector in Ireland. We had great level of engagement with them and discussions on some of the points that, I don't know, I'm anticipating here you may want to mention in your presentation. So, as a country with such a strong leadership and push for evidence-based policy and people-centered justice reform, could you share with us some of your work on what you've been doing to make your justice system more people-centered, also based on data and evidence?
Thank you, Marianne. Good afternoon, everybody. I just take the opportunity to thank Spain and the OECD again for a great 3 days, really rich few days in terms of sharing experiences. In my area of work, access to justice, and I suppose in particular family justice, tends to loom large. For those who may have heard me talk last year, you'll be aware that we're working to reform a system which perhaps could be described as the forgotten child of the civil justice system. That's going to take time, but we are working, I suppose, in certain ways to try and expand, I suppose, the continuum of services for people in family justice, and also, I suppose, look at some targeted approaches. Very briefly, I suppose the next couple of weeks we'll see new developments in those areas. One, we'll launch our first set of child maintenance guidelines, which I know are quite common in many other jurisdictions. And we'll also have an online calculator and tool to help parents identify a set of a child maintenance amount within about 4 or 5 simple steps. Those guidelines are informed by international best practice, by key national economic and social data, by, I suppose in many ways, the views and opinions shared by people who feel that we really need some kind of support. And the aim here is really to provide obviously a non-court option for them and give them consistency and transparency in setting those, in identifying those amounts. And also to allow legal professionals, legal support workers, and indeed the judiciary to I suppose, short-circuit some of the work that can be involved in identifying maintenance amounts. Briefly, the second point I want to highlight before we talk about the PCJ in particular is our work to, I suppose, develop services for children. Just like child maintenance is a children's rights issue, children also have the constitutional right in Ireland to have their views heard. We've taken the last year to develop with a range of stakeholders, including children themselves, a new service which will inform children about the family justice proceedings they're involved in, particularly custody, access and guardianship, and will also provide a way for their views to be conveyed to the court. At the moment, while that right is there, families have to pay for that themselves, and it can be quite expensive. We're delivering a service initially in 2 districts that's going to be rolled out beginning the end of this year to every child over 5 initially who is involved in one of those proceedings, and it will be a free service. A key aspect of children's participation is that they have good information. So it's not just about paying for reports, it's actually informing children in a child-friendly, age-appropriate way about the case that affects them. But I suppose in particular, one thing that we have done in trying to develop some of these elements of reform, which very much align to elements of the recommendation, we have, I suppose, taken the decision with the Commission, our colleagues, and indeed the OECD, to, I suppose, develop a more systematic approach to our people-centred justice service, I suppose, and developments. So with Italy, the Netherlands and Malta, we're working on various variation of elements of people-centred justiceness, but together looking to draw on our experiences and, of course, the expertise of the OECD and the support of the Commission to do that. I'll speak in particular about 2 things because the project is quite vast, but in particular there's enablers here. We've spoken a lot about data, I think, of the last 3 days. If you did a kind of a bubble chart of the term which has come up the most, certainly data would be up there. And I think certainly a greater understanding of people's needs and how they currently seek to resolve them is one obvious, one important, indeed, nay, one vital one for developing more effective systems and developing more people-centred systems. As Micah had alluded to, one of the key aspects for us in this project is a legal needs survey. We have not had our own legal needs survey before, so we're developing our first nationally representative one. We've previously identified people's legal issues in other ways, or what we thought we were identifying through submissions or through consultations or through engagement. But up to now, we have not had a systematic approach to identifying needs. And the project is giving us that. And of course, it's such an important element of the recommendation. Briefly, administered to nearly 2,500 people, it has thrown up some surprising and perhaps some unsurprising findings. The top 4 issues are products, services, money debt, and problems with neighbours. But we're also getting really, really rich data on the number of legal issues they experience, how they're trying to resolve the issues, and their perceptions of fairness in the process of resolution. These are fresh findings. I mean, the survey actually closed 1 month ago today, and I'd just like to commend the team and also the World Justice Project who have been involved in some of the analysis. And of course, we need to think and drill deeper, and we need to think about how this information sits with other forms of information and other data, and particularly our growing administrative data. But it's a really exciting time for us, and I think it's one which will leave a real legacy for Ireland, not just in what we know and how we respond, but also in actually having a legal needs instrument that we can continue to administer in the years ahead. One other aspect of the recommendation I'd like to talk about briefly is also, and some of the OECD's work in this regard, is around capacity building. Developing understandings of, and a shared understanding of a people-centred approach is so important to creating a system, so important to try and pull people together in the one direction. As part of the project, we've established structures, we have consultative groups, we've had webinars, and we've had events to try and build that understanding, and I think that will be part of our process over the ensuing months of the project. But Marianne alluded to our events last week. We had 3 events in about 36 hours where we had a range of different stakeholders, over 120 in total. We had our ministers, we had the department's leadership, we had chief executives of some of our biggest civil justice agencies, we had the CEOs of our independent law centres, of other government bodies who are in that wider landscape of legal support, all hearing about a people-centred approach, all hearing about our work. Our judiciary, our judicial training body, our Chief Justice came along to find out about our findings and how we're trying to progress people-centred approaches. There is a huge amount of great work going on across all these various bodies in Ireland, trying to improve the experiences of people they work with and for, and trying to improve their access to mechanisms. But providing a path, I think, and an understanding of how we can harness all that work in a more people-centred way is really going to be a key concrete outcome of this project, and I think an exciting one. And I think that importance of building a shared understanding is going to be vital to it. So, Marianne, I'll leave it there. Just 2, I suppose, 3 key elements of what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liam. And just back to the points that Micah presented earlier, it's pretty much, first of all, congratulations for the launch of the very first legal needs survey of Ireland. To complement the evidence-based planning that Ireland has already been doing in the past years through the other methods that you've mentioned. And also, indeed, the second point that you also mentioned in terms of organizing these dialogues with stakeholders, as we had last week with over 100 people on different settings and discussions, how this is important to build capacity, but also awareness in the sector, and promote dialogue, refresh the ideas, allow us also to understand a bit more what else can be done in terms of analysis of the raw data that we got with this legal needs survey, but also what else can be done to support the justice sector workforce, and more broadly, people. So with that now, and I'm just I'm going to try to keep sharp on time. I'd like to now pass the floor to Alejandro. So Alejandro.
Thank you so much, Marianne. So,
can I just?
Sorry.
It's just to compliment and introduce. Before you intervene, sorry. So, Spain is leading some of the countries on digital transformation. So it's one of the leading countries on digital transformation. Mm-hmm. And of course, the pearls that you are collecting today comes as a result also of a lot of hard work and foundational work done in the past to make this transformation happen now. So I would like to ask to you, if I may, mm-hmm. What are the key enablers and building blocks in your country's efforts to make the justice system more effective and people-centered? And if you could also cover some of your policy priorities and what you're doing to achieve these priorities.
For sure. So I'd like to take advantage of the occasion and do my intervention in Spanish. So if you may, I'll give you just that brief second. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bueno, lo primero que
The first thing to be said is to start my presentation thanking the OECD for having translated for this summit its recommendation on the access to justice and people-centered justice systems. Is fantastic for us, for Spain, for Latin America, and for the countries here, to have an idea of how important it is to set clear priorities when we want to implement actions, and not starting just with initiatives without continuity. I would like to refer to the recommendation itself so we can see how this recommendation, even though providing broad lines, there are exactly those broad lines that allow us to have an implementation of policies that will end up having an impact on the public. The recommendation states that we should set a culture of justice focused on people so that public powers at the highest level commit to promote the people-centered justice based on data and empirical evidence. This might seem to be just a high-level statement, but in Spain, we have landed it into a practical terms, to a royal decree, where a whole article is devoted to the main principle of being data driven. All our computing systems should guarantee the incorporation and handling of information as metadata. This is absolutely critical. This is at the highest level that public power surveys for the justice systems being based on data, based on moving from justice based on documents or PDFs that are not very useful to extract information to a document that has metadata so that our computing systems can handle more efficiently. It is essential not only to extract information, but also to handle this information. I spoke about automation initiatives, artificial intelligence, and it's in the same Article 35 of our royal decree that Spain becomes one of the first countries in the world, and easier said than done, to include the use of artificial intelligence in the administration. It just opens up the gate, but opening the gate is enough so that then we can reach to another important point included in this recommendation to guarantee that all stakeholders, all public powers, all institutions be coordinated and journeying on the same direction. In a semi-federal country as ours, this is a real challenge, and we in the justice system in Spain, we are attaining it with the Technical Committee of Electronic Judicial Administration, with the general power of the judiciary, general attorneys of the state, and all the regions, all the regional governments that have competences in justice administration. In this committee, we agree on interoperability matters. What is the data we're going to share? Is it just the name or name and last name? We need to agree on those matters for the systems to communicate. And here, responding more directly to one of the questions on policies, we don't only focus on legislation and hard policy, but also on soft policy. And we agree among all of us, if with this royal decree we open the gate to the use of artificial intelligence in system, and thanks to a data manifest and the policy of use of artificial intelligence in justice administration, all the institutional agents have agreed that data of justice administration should be considered as a public good, so they could be offered to the user and citizen. If you get into our website, you could see all data sets and download them. You can access dynamic dashboards to consult the information. Any student at high school could now have an in-depth study of the situation of the justice administration in this system, precisely because we have all agreed on this. And not only that, with the policy of use of artificial intelligence in the administration, we haven't only set broad principles, but we have landed these to cases of use. And just to mention some other aspects of this policy and refer you to future sessions, maybe, Marianne, we can then discuss about what's the role of multilateralism today, although maybe in a second round. But the recommendation states legal and judicial services should be designed especially from the viewpoint of people and taking into account their rights and vulnerabilities. In Spain, we have digital identification systems that are federated on the state with different levels of encryptation. So with a dual authentication factor, I can get to justice folder with my mobile phone and access my electronic judicial file. So we give this information to the citizens. And there is an anecdote. A few weeks ago, a lawyer told us, I have a customer that said he has received a notification before me. And I said, well, the system is not programmed for this, and this is not possible. and the lawyer and the customer had received the notification at the same time, but the customer, because was concerned, opened it up on the same day, and the lawyer didn't realize that the notification was in his inbox until 3 days later. So focusing on this type of justice and using digital transformation is not only people being aware of the efficiency of its administration so we can build trust, but also the blame that different groups could blame the administration. Court is very slow. Now courts are working, the administration is working, and being data-driven, and with this digital transformation, we can make this a reality. There will be a session chaired by Oscar Palomo, Head of International Digital Projects, where there will be a full demonstration later on, and I recommend you to go and attend this session. And I believe that just for a very first round, that's enough.
Taking some notes of what you're saying, and Spain, I mean, it reflects pretty much a lot of the points across of course, the recommendation, but also the Spanish example, and that's one of the reasons why we selected Spain, among other reasons, to be here today. Speaking in this session, it's a truly experience and example of solid governance infrastructure, where you have good coordination across government body agencies on the levels that you mentioned and initiatives. And again, also law, the manifesto of Dato, and their policies that actually help to steer the agenda on digital transformation. So thank you very much. We were also, I mean, now I'd like to pass the floor. We had 2 countries speaking. We were also in Dublin last week with the SG reform, who has been supporting our project on people-centered justice that my colleague Liam mentioned. So I would like to turn now to Alexandra to hear some of the words of what you would have to say in terms of what the SG reform has been doing in terms of country support to advance the people-centered justice agenda.
Thank you very much, Marianne, and it's really a great pleasure to be here to take part in this very interesting session and to present you how the technical support instrument that we in SG Reform manage is contributing to strengthening the national reform efforts on advancing the people centricity. As a short background, SG Reforms provides technical support to design and implement reforms in the European member states. It's always focused on the growth enhancing and structural reforms and covers a wide range of policy areas. So it stretches from digitalization of public administration through public financial management, business growth, education, to justice. And one of the main characteristics of the technical support instrument is that it is demand-based. So the whole process starts with the expression of interest and the demand coming from the national authorities. So as such, our priorities in terms of strengthening the people centricity of justice systems very much respond to the needs and the expression of interest to work in the area from the member states. And we are very happy to see that there is an increasing demand to work to increase the efficiency, effectiveness of justice systems. Since the creation of the instrument, we have been working now with 22 out of 27 European member states on promoting and safeguarding the fundamental rights, as well as improving the quality and independence of justice systems. The current session is focused on the shift from the commitment to implementation of the people-centered justice. And throughout the years when we have been working with the national administrations, we have observed that certain challenges in the justice sectors are really shared by more member states, and that they have a strong impact on how citizens perceive their access to justice. One of them are lengthy proceedings, where the slow pace of proceedings causes additional costs, but also decreases the legal certainty for citizens and businesses. There are some challenges with court and management, court administration and management, with the growing volume of cases and also limited resources on the side of the member states. And also in terms of access to justice, we see that sometimes there is not sufficient of legal aid to provide the first early legal guidance for citizens, in particular for the vulnerable groups, with the result that minor cases often escalate into court cases, creating backlogs and unnecessary costs. We see also that there is not enough of information about legal rights and procedures, including of alternative dispute resolutions. So let me give you some concrete examples how the technical support projects have been supporting member states in delivering better justice systems to member states. In the past year, we have been working with several member states on developing data-driven measures to address backlogs and lengthy judicial proceedings. So in practical terms, this included, for instance, creating a methodology how to better assess and understand the workload of justice professionals, not only in quantitative measures of cases, but also qualitative ones, to ensure better allocation of resources throughout the jurisdictions. We have been working also with member states on in using the digital innovation to face the rising caseloads by automating the routine tasks in judicial proceedings. So, for example, for mass litigation cases, in France we have been developing and piloting a digital triage solution that was automatically flagging incomplete or unfound cases and channel only valid cases to the judges. So this is expected long-term to cut the delays, reduce costs, but also free courts to focus on the substantive disputes. TSI has been also very much focused on increasing public awareness and understanding of the benefits of alternative dispute resolutions, but also on strengthening the access to the legal aid, in particular for vulnerable groups. We work with several countries, the Baltic countries, but also Malta and Portugal, with projects that focus on victims of all the crimes and are targeting to improve the existing support system to address the fragmentation, but also to ensure that all victims who need the support will receive it in an appropriate and timely manner. A particular attention has been also placed on children as victims of abuse to minimize re-traumatization by reducing the repeated testimonies through coordinated interagency approach. This has been also delivered through delivering trainings to key professionals, including the judges and prosecutors, to in trauma-oriented and child-sensitive care. So we are now helping in implementing the Barnahus model in 5 countries, including in Ireland, Croatia, Spain, Finland, and Slovenia. And last but not least, I would like to mention our project that you already heard throughout the previous intervention, that it's ongoing with the OECD as our implementing partner, that is focused on advancing the people centricity of justice systems in Ireland, Malta, Netherlands, and Italy. The project very much focuses on providing a better understanding of legal needs and also the assessment of the current level of people centricity of the systems to ultimately integrate the people-focused approach in the national policy cycles. And long-term, this is expected to empower the vulnerable groups to navigate through the justice system and increase the effectiveness, responsiveness, and efficiency of justice systems. I think I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. Just wanted to highlight in your presentation that the technical support instrument is a great example here of how we can, or how countries' commitment to people-centered justice reforms can be steered, and also how such type of support can also enable some of the purpose and culture of people-centered justice to become something that is tangible, concrete, and come to reality in countries, in the context in EU member countries. So thank you very much. As is the case now with what we're doing with Malta, with Ireland, with the Netherlands, with Italy. With that said, and I see here that we have 13 minutes left before we close the session, I would like And before continuing the discussions here with the panel, I'd like to check with our audience if there are any questions that you would like to ask to any of our panelists. I know that some of you might be a bit shy. Please, Sam. Mic here on the front, please, colleagues. Yes, the mic's coming. Yes.
Yes, thank you. In these turbulent times for which we have no name, as Mary Beth said yesterday, I'm just curious if there are any reflections from the panel on doing this and dealing with election cycles. Like go like this and go all over the place, and how we incorporate that into our thinking and our way of working. Thank you.
Ireland or Spain, which of you have elections sooner wants to provide?
We had an election in November 2024, so our project was still quite new. And I suppose the political participation that we had at our events last week, and in particular both our minister and our deputy minister here as well, I think showed a strong commitment, I think, to this project and making our systems more people-centered and enhancing access to justice more generally. I think it's also about leadership perhaps across the system. So our ministry very much speaks to the values of being collaborative, open and professional, and I think engaging in that way, I think in trying to create a better understanding of what it is we're trying to do is a great assistance to try and do that. So I suppose to answer your question directly, I suppose we were rather fortuitous that we weren't too far into the project, but we also had we've also had great support from our minister from there on. Spain.
For that, I would like to, again, speak in Spanish, so if I may. Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you. Actually, if we think about the hazard of focusing on citizens and being citizen-centered and therefore driving the digital transformation of justice, the results are so positive for society that I wouldn't expect any difference in political terms, whatever the political party in charge, they will get very good news to announce to society on how they're informing citizens, how their citizens can be aware that their taxes are being put to good use. Early this year, for instance, our government approved an organic law which requires absolute majority. It's Organic Law 1/2025 for efficiency of the public justice service. Our government is now a minority in the Congress, but all political parties are aware that the fact that the justice system is performing is positive as advertising for their government. So no matter who is in power, everyone benefits from giving citizens these good news.
To add a quick reflection, I mean, I think it's a question every civil servant struggles with domestically as well as in international collaboration. How do you assure the continuity of the work that you're doing while, of course, responding to political leadership, political priorities, and outcome of elections? I think in our project and in the OECD support, the key element in that would be the capacity building element. So one of the things that we haven't really gone into much detail about here yet is that in most of the projects that we have, we try to bring expertise from other countries that is very relevant to what our partner country is going going through. So, for example, in the mission in Ireland last week, we had expertise from the Netherlands, which was in the Netherlands. There was recently a knowledge center for the legal aid sector that was developed, and that expertise is particularly relevant right now in the context of Ireland, where there is a legal aid review that was just published, and the government is organizing its response to that and a consequence. So that way you can bring expertise, build capacity, and that capacity lasts. Of course, it may have to be redirected based on new political priorities, but the technical capacity of dealing with data, of this specific example on the legal aid reform, that is built throughout the project, I think, gives it sustainability beyond the election cycle.
Thank you very much, Maika. Yeah, and just to complement the importance of having high-level civil servants and the leadership that stays beyond all the political, across the political cycles to really support and embrace the agenda. So this can be a last-longing effort and a continued effort. We have 6 minutes, and I'm very committed to finish on time, but I'm also very keen for more questions and in case the audience has. So any other questions that colleagues in the room would like to ask? Yes, please, sir.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to all the panel. I would like to speak in Spanish.
Of course.
I would like to thank all panel members. I found all your presentations very interesting on the measures that can be adopted in making the system more citizen-centered. And I would particularly like to congratulate OECD for the significant drive that this agenda brings to the future guidance of justice systems. Being citizen-centered or people-centered was just a mere mention, but actually the 2023 recommendation is the very foundation on which this agenda is being built, thanks to you. And I realize that other international organizations are keeping a close eye on this progress. Certainly, we haven't been into implementing the recommendation for a long time because it only dates back to 2023. However, I would still like to remember that we're only 2 years into it, to ask if any of you have noticed, let's say, any shortcomings, any insufficiencies that would require further fine-tuning of the recommendation, if you see what I mean. I just want to know if in this short life of the recommendation you have detected anything that is missing, which could be added as a later add-on. Thank you.
Anyone?
If I may. Yep.
Go ahead.
So I think that for
Creo que en el estado actual, en esta situación actual de
is something really difficult to achieve, because we would need to, all of us, to agree on specifics which may not be super low level, but still enough low level to actually not be able to agree on them. So because of that, I don't really think there is much that we would change for us. The general lines of the recommendation are all right. I mean, if you were a country that you would need to actually start to make the process and to orient your justice system into to make it people-centered, I would definitely recommend having this as a blueprint. Of course, the final implementation of any measures is the responsibility of the states. But as I was saying in the introduction, what I believe is that you can really count on multilateral institutions such as the OECD and on the knowledge they have. I remember, and this is just an anecdote, but I remember when we had the Valencia floodings, the ministry, of course, there was a crisis committee. They were elaborating the royal decree law that came some days after that with a lot of measurements. And we thought, okay, we have had a lot of ideas on what we should do, but maybe there's a lot of more ideas outside that we don't know and that it may actually be super useful to implement here now that we have this crisis situation. And I remember going to the OECD, asking them, can you please elaborate for us a complete report on how other countries have tackled this kind of crisis, of weather crisis. We had a session in the morning about this. And they devoted, I think it was you, Marianne, they devoted...
And the team, yeah.
The team, yeah, but for me was a whole team justice, but at least one person completely devoted to this, but moving the whole team, moving the whole organization for an urgent request of a country to actually be provided of the knowledge that the organization has. If we would have need to look for that knowledge ourselves, well, it would have been impossible to have it on the same day. And this happened because an organization such as the OECD exists. So for me, this is the value. I think this recommendation would be all right. If you're starting, I would say you can trust the OECD. And from the side of Spain, if you want us to further explain some of the initiatives that we have, we would also be more than happy to do so.
In the next session of Spanish initiatives, we have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Alejandro, unless you want to complement on multilateralism, I would like then to give the floor to Liam in 45 seconds. If you could tell me, in your view, what role, and also linking to the question from the audience, what role can multilateral cooperation play in driving forward implementation of the OECD recommendation?
I think events like this just highlight that it was mentioned on the opening day as well, that we're all dealing with the same issues. Sometimes we can make a lot of our differences. We're different legal systems, we're different unitary versus federal systems, but actually if you start at the position of the person and the individual and how we respond to their needs, I think you can go certainly a very long way to try and address them by learning from others, irrespective of those systems. Bringing people together at events like this is really important, and where we all engage, but also I think the outputs of our project should help, hopefully, other countries at the various stages of the people-centered journey. And I think to answer your question directly, no, I haven't seen anything at the moment. But as we progress, who knows what it throws up. But also, who knows what new issues might arise, which might require us to look at things into the future as well. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Liam. Alexandra? In 30 seconds.
It's getting shorter and shorter.
Okay, 45 seconds, as you want.
It's good.
Given SG reform role in supporting reforms across the European Union, what else can be done, in your view, from the perspective of multilateral cooperation to add value to national reforms and efforts to complement the EU Commission support in implementing the recommendation and so on?
Thank you very much, and I can actually echo what has been already said, because we have really see a strong added value when the countries work together, they share their experiences, where there is the occasion to network and work together to find solutions for common challenges. We also see, and this is hope for all of our projects that we are implementing, the final deliverables, outputs, everything that is produced is publicly available. So we also expect that this will have a positive spillover effect for countries that did not participate, as Liam mentioned, in the project, simply because it is all shared and available, and then it's easier to reach out to the right counterparts to get more information, insights, and to network. I see 000, so I will stop here.
I'm sorry for the time cut. So with that, I would like to close the session. But before that, I would like also to thank, on behalf of the OECD, the participants, Ireland, SG Reform present here today, but also our dear co-hosts, the Ministry of Justice, Director General for Digital Transformation of Justice, for co-hosting this event and also allowing a global dialogue on important discussions of our recommendations. So thank you very much.
And so with this, I'm getting back to the moderator role, and we are heading on to a networking break for 20-25 minutes. So see you in that time. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we kindly ask you to please take your seats as we prepare to commence.
Por favor, solicitamos a todos los asistentes que vayan tomando sus asientos.
Everyone, hello. So, we're continuing. Amer, hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
So, Amer will be our moderator for this parallel session that we're having right now. We're continuing. I convene, please, all of the different moderators, yes, to go to the room. So we're having different parallel sessions, one in investing in justice, another one a showcase session on Spanish initiatives, and then this one on enhancing access to justice for SMEs in the Middle East and Africa that we moderated by Amir. Please enjoy the sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear Alejandro. I will start by calling our colleagues and speakers. Sarah, please. Justice Hussam, please. And Minister, please. Please. So, good afternoon, everyone. We are very happy, and it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you again at the very end of this 3 intensive days and session. This session we will speak together about access to justice for SMEs in the Middle East and Africa. SMEs represent the vast majority of businesses worldwide, around 99% of firms in OECD countries, and are the essential driver of employment, innovation, and economic resilience. Yet, justice services in many countries remain difficult for them to navigate. Lengthy and costly procedures, complex regulations, and limited legal information continue to hinder SMEs' abilities to resolve dispute, enforce contract, or operate within a predictable environment. Strengthening access to justice for SMEs is therefore central to improving legal certainty and enabling entrepreneurship and supporting wider reform and digitalization effort, as we saw also in previous sessions. This roundtable offers a unique opportunity to reflect on emerging practices that are helping justice system better respond to businesses. Many countries are taking forward innovative reform, and it is at the core of the OECD mission to provide this kind of platform to exchange between peers and mutual peer learning. Today's panel will explore how justice can evolve to better meet SMEs' legal needs, and how justice institutions can work closely with economic and social actors to design solutions that are practical, accessible, and future-oriented. We are very honored in this edition of the Roundtable from the high-level representation that we had from the MENA region and Africa. And we are extremely honored to be joined in this panel by His Excellency Alpha Cissé, Attorney General and Minister of Justice of Sierra Leone. Thank you so much, dear Minister, for being with us. With my dear friend and dear colleague, Deputy Minister of Justice from Egypt, Justice Hussam Sadeh. Thank you so much, Justice Hussam, for being with us. And we are also delighted to have with us Dr. Sara Radai, who will have a very interesting presentation that will present key insight from our OECD ongoing research on access to justice for SMEs that is being carried out in partnership with HEAL. Thank you for all your support and for being here, and of course with her. With that, I would like to thank all of our speakers once again, and stop here and give the floor to my colleague Sara to present some of the key findings of this research. Then we will reflect on these findings by our panel, and we will open the floor to everyone if there is questions. So, Sara, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amr. Thank you. Let's see if this works. Up.
We need help with the presentation?
There we go.
All good.
Oh, no? That's fin de la présentation.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you so much. Right, thank you, Amr. So I'll be presenting some preliminary findings of an upcoming study that Amr mentioned on SME access to justice, and specifically in the Middle East and North Africa. But there are our analysis and the emerging evidence also shows some broader insights that are relevant to SMEs in Middle East and Africa more regionally, more broadly. So to understand the justice needs of SMEs, we need to begin with the wider SME landscape. And it goes without saying, of course, that MEA, so Middle East and Africa, is a diverse region and far from homogeneous. So some countries benefit from strong fiscal capacity, advanced infrastructure, and ongoing efforts to modernize commercial and judicial frameworks, including digital services. Others are navigating more complex or institutional conditions where markets and public services continues to be shaped by demographic pressures and external shocks. Now, this diversity is also reflected in the legal and institutional landscape, where in several countries we've seen that reforms are underway, so quite promising, to update commercial legislation, introduce digital justice tools, and streamlining procedures. In other contexts, SMEs may still encounter more traditional processes, overlapping mandates, or slower enforcement, which can make the business environment a bit harder to navigate. Now, social and governance arrangements, they also tend to vary. Some states have well-established SME agencies and structured policy frameworks, and elsewhere, local networks, business associations, and civil society actors play an extremely important role in, an important complementary role, actually, in supporting entrepreneurs. Now, Middle East and Africa's exposure to global crises should also not be understated. We have demographic change and shifting economic conditions that should not be understated. Just to give you an example, almost half of the population in the Middle East and North Africa region is under the age of 25, and it is projected by 2030, almost 42% of the world's youth will live in the African continent. Of course, these are general observations, but we do understand that these demographic issues will become pertinent in the future as well. So these diverse contexts, they do tend to shape the legal challenges SMEs face generally, and the pathways available to resolve them. Yet across all these settings, what we've found is that one theme is clear, which is that SMEs play a central role in employment, innovation, and economic resilience, making it essential that justice systems are accessible, predictable, and responsive to their needs. So, access to justice. So it is indeed a foundation of SME growth and inclusion. So across the MENA region and in other comparable contexts, SMEs indicate that they often choose not to use formal courts or administrative procedures. Now, this is not necessarily a reflection on the legitimacy of these institutions, but rather one on the practical barriers SMEs face, including procedural complexity, high costs relative to the side of the dispute, and the time required to obtain a resolution. Now, when legal issues remain unresolved, the effects can be significant. Goes without saying that SMEs can experience financial losses, reputational challenges, and interruptions to their operations. Sustained legal uncertainty, a common theme that we've heard across this conference, is that legal uncertainty really can discourage investment, limit innovation, and in some cases even lead to business closure. And at a wider level, unmet justice needs can slow progress on job creation, formalization, and economic diversification, all of which are essential to a long-term and sustainable development. Now, conversely, a responsive and a people-centered justice system, so one that provides accessible information, proportionate procedures, and early resolution options, can create a more enabling environment. These systems help level the playing field, strengthen economic confidence, and support inclusive growth. They also enhance resilience by helping SMEs navigate shocks and manage risks more effectively. So for these reasons, improving access to justice is not only an institutional reform, it is a strategic investment in economic development and SME performance across Middle East and Africa. So what are some of the broader types of enhancing access to justice for SMEs? Well, strengthening SME access to justice means ensuring that legal systems are accessible, fair, and timely, as I mentioned, and that businesses can resolve problems before they escalate. Now, this aligns closely with international commitments, including Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular SDG 8, 10, and 16, which highlight the importance of effective institutions, reduced inequalities, and decent work conditions. Improving access to justice also supports policy coherence. When ministries, agencies, and local actors work together, we found that SMEs benefit from clearer information, better coordinated services, and fewer overlapping requirements. Now, this kind of coordinated approach helps reduce administrative complexity and fosters greater trust in public institutions. Across MEA, we've seen promising innovations, and this is something that should be highlighted and celebrated. There are some really exciting innovations happening, so these range from digital justice tools to streamlined procedures, mediation services, legal clinics, and NGO-led support models. And they really do demonstrate that practical, people-centered solutions can make a tangible difference for SMEs, especially for women entrepreneurs, youth-led businesses, and firms operating in rural or informal settings. Now, informality is something that is quite characteristic across the region as well, and it's something that should be taken into account. I'd also like to emphasize that promoting access to justice encourages regional dialogue and peer learning. I think the last session we heard, this was very much emphasized, and it really allows countries to share experiences, adapt successful approaches, and collectively strengthen the legal ecosystems that support SME resilience and inclusive growth. Okay, so let me see, is this correct? There we go. Sorry about that. So what are the key constraints that are affecting SME access to justice? Well, across the region, our findings show that SMEs consistently highlight a number of challenges that limit their ability to access to justice, or to access justice and engage efficiently with legal and regulatory systems. Many SMEs encounter issues related to taxation, regulatory compliance, and client non-payment. Now, these are not isolated problems, but part of the everyday operating environment for many small businesses. A significant proportion of SMEs identify procedural complexity, lengthy timelines, and costs as major barriers to using formal mechanisms. For micro and smaller enterprises especially, navigating these processes can be demanding, especially when administrative capacity is limited. We also see that compliance requirements can be difficult to understand or interpret, with only a small share of SMEs that, reporting that regulatory rules feel straightforward. This does not reflect a lack of willingness to comply, but rather the need for systems that are clearer and easier to use. Now, what do SMEs want in a justice system? So the insights that we've collected from SMEs in the Middle East and North Africa shows a high degree of consistency in what they value in justice systems and regulatory processes. They emphasize the importance of clear, practical information that helps them understand their rights and responsibilities. They're looking for simple and streamlined procedures that reduce administrative burden and allow them to focus on running their business. Timeliness is also critical. SMEs want mechanisms that deliver predictable and efficient outcomes, whether through courts, administrative authorities, or alternative dispute resolution pathways. Affordability is a major concern as well. The SMEs often prefer solutions that are proportionate to the scale of the issue and do not require substantial time away from their core activities. We've also had quite a few SMEs also also express a strong interest in digital tools, early resolution options, and services that can be accessed remotely or outside standard working hours. These tools can help reduce transaction costs and expand access for rural, youth-led, and women-led businesses. Now, together, these preferences provide a clear direction. Justice systems that are user-centered, accessible, and responsible are better are better positioned to meet the SME needs and to support broader economic inclusion. Now, drawing on these insights, several policy directions emerge that could help strengthen access to justice for SMEs and create a more supportive business environment. So first, and by the way, these are very much a reiteration of what has been said in these last days, right? So first is adopting a whole of government approach is essential. SME-related justice issues span multiple institutions, and coordinated action can reduce duplication, promote clarity, and make compliance more manageable for business. Second, ongoing digital reforms and specialized pathways offer significant potential. Digital filing systems, online case tracking, and specialized commercial units can improve transparency and efficiency, and ensuring that these tools are accessible to all SMEs, regardless of size. And here again, I reiterate the prevalence of micro-enterprises in the region. Also, location or formality remains a key priority. Third, expanding literacy and navigation support can help SMEs better understand procedures and proactively address legal issues. This is especially important for women and youth-led enterprises, as well as rural or informal businesses. Innovative models such as legal clinics, one-stop platforms, and community-based services show promising results as well. Fourth, strengthening alternative dispute resolution mechanisms can provide SMEs with faster, more cost-effective avenues to resolve problems before they escalate. Fifth, simplifying and harmonizing laws and administrative procedures alongside clear communication of reforms can help reduce complexity and foster a more enabling environment. Sixth, enhancing cooperation among public institutions, private sector actors, and civil society can help scale innovative approaches and address gaps in service provision, especially in more challenging operating environments. As was discussed in yesterday's panel, reality on the ground where policies are created and are participatory and listens to what SMEs have to say are very important. And finally, aligning justice reforms with national development strategies and including the Sustainable Development Goals, supported by robust data and monitoring, ensures that progress is sustained and that SME needs remain central to institutional reforms. Now, taken together, these directions point toward justice systems that are more accessible, more predictable, and more supportive of inclusive economic growth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your presentation and these insightful findings. I will now turn to our panelists to hear how these issues resonate, or what have been presented resonate at the national level in Sierra Leone and in Egypt. As we saw, both regions, whether it is the Middle East or Africa in general, faces persistent justice challenges when it comes to SMEs' access to justice, the complex procedures, or the high cost of litigation. They often also rely on informal channels. So from your country perspective, I will start by asking Minister Cissé this question. From your country perspective, what are the most significant legal needs and justice problem or procedural challenges that encounters SMEs' access to justice, and what would you identify as the top 2 priorities to start addressing to better access to justice, for better access to justice for SMEs?
All right, thank you very much. The part that I'm not I'm sure about is whether, the priorities are really just top two, right? I think, there are a range of things that really need to be done. But it's great to be here, and thank you very much for that report. I think the findings in the report, and the recommendations actually, significantly resonate with the experiences for SMEs in Sierra Leone. Mm-hmm. Of course, yesterday the panel here, where my brother Udo and others sat, really laid out the important role that SMEs play, the backbone of economies in various countries. But then the justice systems have not really catered for them. So we get the same problems in Sierra Leone. Right, but there are certain specific things that I'd like to point out which really pose significant challenges for SMEs. I think, so our justice system, we start by acknowledging that a lot of laws in our justice system are outdated, right? When these laws were enacted, some before the country attained independence, the system did not really cater for SMEs. Right, and so we have continued implementing these laws, and then, at great risk to the enjoyment of fundamental rights, or, hindrance to accessing justice for SMEs. In Sierra Leone, a major challenge, I would say, is the criminalization of petty offenses. Is one major challenge, right? And so there are specific petty offenses that are criminalized in Sierra Leone. One is payment of debt. And so when you have several financial institutions coming around with microcredits for SMEs, and then, high interest, short windows for payment, and then if SMEs cannot match up with the timing for payment and the interest, the system comes after them. That is criminalized. It's a major challenge. And so, during my time in government, I have seen several people in our correctional service facilities who are there because of petty offenses. And the impact, of course, is there for all to see, right? Of course, you're taking them away from their businesses, you're killing the business, but then it has, bigger implications. I discussed this with a friend at some point in my office, and, she shared her own experience, right? Say in her neighborhood, there was a young boy there who was always around begging money. And so at some point, she actually had an engagement with this young boy. And once she started talking to the young boy, other people in the neighborhood kept saying to her, hey, auntie, don't allow him to come to your house. He's a thief, And so he had a deeper conversation with the young boy, where do you live, where are your parents? It happened that this young boy lived with his aunt, right? But then the aunt was not home. She was on the run because they were coming after her for microcredit that she had taken and which she needed to pay, right? So yes, so in that case, you actually saw the impact going beyond just the life of the business, to having implications for other family members. So that's one. Another thing that I'd like to talk about is the challenge in accessing justice for them in accessing justice, right? One, we look at the distance that sometimes people have to cover in these communities, but then we look at the bottlenecks, right? The length of time that people take in the justice system. And I say, I like to make this example, say if the only options that we're providing are courts, right? And then courts are not available in certain areas. It basically means when people have justice needs, they have to cover significant distances to get their justice needs met. So if, let us say, a business man or woman has to move from one village to a main town because they have a court matter. Sometimes they come there, the magistrate is not around, right? Sometimes, the lawyer is away, and so there are adjournments. So by the time you know it, they're spending more on transport than the amount of the claim itself, right? That affects business. But also each time the person has to cover that distance, in addition to what they spend, it basically means the shop will be shut down, right? Those who have to be on their farms will not be there. So that's another challenge, right? I also like to say, other challenges like, the way we apply outdated laws, We still have laws in some of our countries. We say colonial era laws, right? We are in, you say, even for insulting conduct, right? For loitering, someone has to go to jail, right? And so if someone owns a carpentry shop, right? And then for insulting conduct or loitering or for payment of debt, you have to send that person to prison. Then the carpentry shop shuts down, right? And then it has implications on the family, right? The kids are probably going to drop out of school. But then if the owner of that carpentry shop has about 10 other people working in that shop, that's 11 families affected right away. So these are the implications that we are really talking about. I think another challenge that we should really talk about, in the context of SMEs is the impact of climate change. Yes, for countries like Sierra Leone, when we talk about the impact of climate change, we're not only talking about like statistics or distant targets, right? We're talking about the lived reality for our people, especially in a country that has a lot of water-dependent sectors, like agriculture, fisheries, etc., right? And so a lot of actors in this space are SMEs, and so this has significant impact on them. But then, we are not only talking about the problems, right? We're talking about, really laying out solutions, how we're addressing it. And so what we have been doing in Sierra Leone, through the Legal Aid Board, we have been providing legal services to SMEs. The numbers really show that during the life of the Legal Aid Board, we've provided legal assistance to 235 entrepreneurs. 78 of those cases, were resolved at the police station level. 147 of those cases were resolved through ADR, and 10 of those cases, the persons were really represented in court. But that is small, right? And so we really think we have to do more, and that is why, we are really expanding the reach of the small claims courts. We are also expanding the reach of the justice hubs, so people can really come to these hubs, get their justice needs met there. Sometimes just come with their questions, use the answers to inform decision making. We are institutionalizing mediation. When I get back, I'll be laying in the mediation bill in Parliament, and so we really institutionalize and provide that option. We have the fast-track commercial courts, but of course we also need to clear the backlog of cases that we have in our system. So certain cases should not really be there. So let's, look at all of that and get them out. We are decriminalizing petty offenses. We recently started implementing the Criminal Procedure Act, and so for that we have, sentences that are alternative to incarceration now. But I think the other thing that is really good to pay attention to, which we're doing, is when we talk about, protecting ideas, when we talk about intellectual property, providing that as a service. We don't only want to discuss this in the context of people who are in computer labs, right? We don't only want to talk about people who have, like, the technological tools to do research, right? We also want to talk about that woman or man in the rural community whose idea is just creating some art, right? Or, putting together some fabric, and so how do we protect their ideas? How do we make sure that the system protects them so that, people don't steal their ideas and then, make big monies out of it. So, these are all a range of issues we are looking at, and using them as services that we provide to SMEs. And one more thing, if I may. Of course. I like the fact that yesterday, Udo talked about sometimes we don't pay attention to the woman on the side of the road selling corn with the baby on their back, right? So providing services to SMEs, we have to look at a range of things. Now we are factoring this into how we construct markets, right? If you have been to Sierra Leone, Freetown, there's a place called Lumley. It's always very crowded, right? And so we're trying to make sure that, we get rid of street trading. But then, we've built, as a government, we've built a very big facility, right, which will be a marketplace. But if you build that, right, and then you move people from the streets, move businesses into this facility, and we're not solving all of the problems, because the point is that for some of these, the challenge is that going to the market to sell and, hack out a living, the challenge is, where do I leave the child, right, who is not going to school? And that's one big problem. And so the way we want to construct markets now is, and we're doing this at Lumley and in other places, is to actually also put childcare facilities in there, so that, when people come with their businesses, they have a safe place for their kids. That's one less problem for them. It means they can focus. And when the businesses thrive, they're less likely to get into conflict with the law. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Minister. Now I will turn to Justice Hussam with the same question from Egypt perspective. What would be the most significant legal need and justice problem or procedural challenges for SMEs accessing justice?
Thank you, Amr, in the beginning. And I would like to address my intervention in Arabic, but before that, I would like very much to thank the OECD and the Ministry of Justice of Spain for the success and the fruitful conference that we had for 3 days. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to address in Arabic my intervention. في الحقيقة يعني قبل البداية والكلام عن المعوقات والتحديات فينبغي ان يعني ان انا اذكر بعض النقاط اللي قد اراها مهمة ويمكن الزميلة سارة تعرضت لها في جزء منها او بشكل اكثر اكاديمي في عرضها لكن أنا بحساب أن أنا كنت قبل ما تولى منصبي كمساعد الوزير جلست في منصة القضاء في محكمة النقد المصرية لمدة 12 عام في الغرفة التجارية والغرفة الاقتصادية وكان بيعرض علي العديد من القضايا المتعلقة بالقضايا التجارية وقضايا الإفلاس.
Before I was appointed as a deputy minister, I used to work in contentious law, and I have plenty of commercial cases. Hello?
There is no English. There is.
Is English interpretation working well? Is it coming through? Thank you. English apparently coming through.
Sí, sí.
So, yes, testing. Audio check for English once more.
لما اتكلم على التحديات
about the legal challenges or hurdles. Well, and I will only deal with my personal experience. For 12 years, I worked as a judge for the Court of Appeal in administrative matters. And I saw plenty of cases brought by SMEs, most of them bankruptcy cases, as a consequences of those legal obstacles they had to face or overcome. We noticed that small companies would request a small loan of 100 or 200,000 pounds, but through the length of the lawsuit that might take 2 to 3 years until the case came to the Court of Appeal, their debt exceeded millions. Sometimes they went from 100,000 Egyptian pounds to 50 million. So there are several dimensions to the issue. Any country attempting to set up a strategy to deal with these problems must forcibly go through foreseeing future challenges. Because back in 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we looked around us and saw that many companies, and I'm not talking about SMEs here, we saw that large enterprises went bankrupt as a consequence of the lockdown or the world pandemic. What I'm saying is legal obstacles are not only limited to health crisis. As Sarah was saying, armed conflict, war, is also a huge challenge for businesses, as well as economy crisis, the increase in prices has led powerful countries to take serious falls. When a certain country imports or exports material at a certain price, and then the prices drop, countries and governments suffer the economic consequences. So legislators and decision makers talk about the economic balance. And when we talk about SMEs here, we're only addressing one category of companies that could be compared to vulnerable communities. They need all sorts of incentives and support. Even in fast-growing countries or solidly growing countries, if the resources are reduced, the country is forced to take support on individuals and SMEs. And in that case, these SMEs may evolve to become large companies that support the entrepreneurial fabric of the country. So being people-centered is closely related to SME development. And this shows on competitiveness, for instance, and enabling the creation of SMEs has a positive impact for the society. And also, markets get a supply of the products they need. So I wanted to make this clear before I go into the subject matter of the question. You asked about legal challenges to overcome. Well, these vary according to the circumstances in each country. Egypt as a country has a powerful legal system that we're deeply proud of. We pride ourselves that our legal system dates back to centuries, and ancient Egypt already had a solid legal system. But as many other countries, we suffer from bureaucracy, which in turn is associated to the idiosyncrasy of the country. Sometimes bureaucracy stems from guarantees established by the state to make sure that everyone abides by the rules. So yes, there's a lot of work around or paperwork that cannot be avoided. So that in and of itself is a challenge to overcome. So other alternatives for administrative mediation don't always facilitate things. There's another obstacle like clerical delay in issuing permits or licenses. Sometimes entrepreneurs cannot wait long enough until a permit is issued or a license. Another challenge to overcome in Egypt is the lack of mediation or reconciliation committees or bodies. Sometimes we have negotiations, but those committees are not as solid as we need them to be, not yet. And then the participation of a sector that is non-licensed in the economic fabric. Sometimes entrepreneurs don't have the required license for a specific activity, and when that activity is finally found out, penalties are imposed. Also, legal assistance programs are not at their peak yet, not in our country. Many of them are very effective, but not all of them are effective enough to address the needs of a whole country. So a cultural awareness campaign is very much needed. Law 55 from 2020 is a relevant legislation providing guarantees and incentives to SMEs, to newly created SMEs. We also have an intellectual property legislation, and we have an intellectual property agency, which we consider, which we're aware is very important with SMEs, because when SMEs have their own certificates, they need to protect their intellectual property. And, well, our top and second priority is updating our law and our awareness in SMEs. Second, we want to group alternative forms of mediation and reconciliation. So we need to round up the existing system around economic justice in our country. Thank you.
Similarities actually from both your presentation on challenges and solution. We see ADRs coming a lot in your discussion as a good solution to better access to justice for businesses. I like also very much the part on the bureaucracy and the administrative simplification for registration and licensing, but I think we should also expand this not only at the level of the licensing, but we should also ease a little bit the procedures when it comes to litigation. The example Justice Hassam just gave when he was a judge at the court, starting you are in litigation for an amount of money that doesn't exceed 10,000 euros, and by the end of the process of the litigation process in front of courts, you are due to pay millions back. And actually very interesting and important specificity also to note here is the criminalization of petty offense. I think this is one of the major aspects that we can also try to focus on and look at further in our research. Thank you so much for this. I will turn now to you again, dear Minister, now with our second question. We saw in the presentation a range of emerging solutions. I know you already suggested some of them, but ADRs, of course, they are a good solution, but arbitration is also very costly for SMEs and not very accessible for SMEs. So ADR as such, I would say, might not be enough for better access justice to SMEs. So we saw some mechanisms that were presented by Sarah, like e-courts or online dispute resolution platform. Sometimes also legal clinics helps a lot, and specialized commercial court. You mentioned the Economic Court of Egypt. I think this is something that we can also look at when you come, and also the one-stop digital services for SMEs. So how do these developments resonate with the experience in Sierra Leone? And looking ahead, which of these approaches do you see as most relevant, most adaptable, or even most realistic for your country?
Well, I mean, the point is that several of the examples the Honourable Minister mentioned really resonate with our practice in Sierra Leone or the investments that we want to make. I mean, of course, there are specialized commercial courts in Egypt. We have the fast-track commercial courts. Yes. You understand? In Sierra Leone. So yes, we need to strengthen the work of these mechanisms. So for us, when we talk about ADR, so first we have the Arbitration Act, right? Which really makes provision for arbitration in Sierra Leone. But the point is, before that act came into effect, and even now that we have had that act, even at the fast-track commercial court, right, there are certain matters where the judges will just say, let's move this into ADR, right? So we note that, yes, there is that, but then, of course, it has its own challenges, right? It's expensive, for some SMEs, corporations engage through it, etc. And so that is why we are now bringing in a mediation law, separate mediation law.
Okay.
So that is supposed to really institutionalize and make provision for the settlement of civil and commercial disputes. We have made strong arguments for it, and we're structuring it in a way that it's a cheaper option for people, for SMEs, right? It's less acrimonious, right? It's also operates within a shorter period of time, and the way we structured it is in a way that the parties can determine by themselves that they want to go through to mediation. They can select their own mediator. Now, we are going to train mediators across the country, right? And unlike arbitration, where we'll say, yes, there are certain people who've gone through arbitration courses, and have certain certifications, etc., etc. We want to really have this operate at the community level. So in communities, we'll identify certain people, right? It might be the imam in the community. It might be the pastor in the community. It might be the youth leader in that community. It might be the mommy queen, right, in the marketplace. So these ones we are going to train, and then we will certify them as mediators. So when there are civil and commercial disputes, the parties can determine that they want to go to one of these people. We have a lot of bike riders across the country, right? It might be the head of the Bike Riders Association, right? These are the people that will train as mediators. It might be the head of a youth group, right? And then certain matters will also go to court, which the magistrate or the judge can just, direct that, they be sent to mediation. So that's going to be a viable option. We're hoping that we'll start to operationalize this by next year. Already, it's really to note that mediation happens in Sierra Leone, right? But now, of course, with this law, we will institutionalize, and then we will make the outcome of the mediation process enforceable. So that is going to help. Within the digital landscape, that is something that we're looking at. So we have recently designed a blueprint for an e-justice system. But from the onset, when we started this process, one thing that we put on the table, of course, as we said here, moving into government, having done, human rights practice all of my life, one thing that we put on the table immediately, and I was very keen on that sometimes when we talk about these investments, whether it's investment into digitalization or requirement for people to obtain identity documents, for example, yes, we talk about the services that are going to be provided, but I want to talk about those people who are likely to be excluded from services because of these things that we're putting in place, right? And so that was on the table when we were designing this blueprint for digitalization. So we are rolling out a system that will not only make the court system effective, efficient, or transparent, but we want a system that will also provide services to those people that are not going to come to the court system, right? Those people who live in rural communities or in marginalized communities. We want them to be able to use these platforms to resolve their own issues, you understand? Or sometimes to even seek answers to their own justice problems, So that's how we want to really roll it out and ensure that it really works for everyone, including those in the last mile.
Thank you so much, dear Minister, and congratulations for this solution. I like very much that the fact that you will also train on mediation the young leader, the youth leaders, and the local leaders, because this is also a merge of to formalize or to institutionalize a little bit the informal justice solution. So thank you so much. Justice Hussain, same question, please.
Okay.
Okay, first allow me to highlight two things when we speak about mediation. Here, I'm not speaking about extrajudicial ones. Sometimes the cost of arbitration and mediation is even higher, so those SMEs cannot afford them. In Egypt, in the year 2008, we enacted the law of economic courts, so we now have economic courts that for the last few years introduced the concept of mediation and arbitration within the commercial courts without SMEs having to pay for any additional cost if they decide to use arbitration or mediation systems that are not in the legal system. They will have to pay more. In my country, we have a mediation act. In the first question, we spoke about legal aid offices. In Egypt, we have several specialized in family law, in commercial law. They offer free legal assistance to vulnerable groups. And also, sometimes SMEs are also marginalized and they need to use this free legal aid, especially micro SMEs and very small business. They need some support so they don't have to pay the lawyer's fees. Also, at these commercial courts, we have created a possibility for electronic handling of cases. On the other hand, we can issue certificates and all documents through ATMs. We also try to locate those ATMs in foreign countries at the embassies so they can have those certificates in an easy and handy manner. We have a commission that reports directly to the Council of Ministers with an early warning mechanism. This early warning mechanism is realized through a committee with the Ministry of Planning and Communication, the country's central bank, and some other entities. One of the objectives of this committee is, as I said, an early warning in relation to different projects and decide on the obstacles that may end up in a failure of the projects, therefore providing support before the problem becomes really large. This is one of the most recent mechanisms that are considered part of the system. Is a solution from the state to support SMEs in dispute resolution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Important question that we would like also to run by both of you, because it's often actually overlooked when it comes to SME, is the international dimension. And we see that medium-sized enterprises particularly are increasingly engaging in cross-border trade and regional value chain and access. And here, accessible and predictable justice mechanisms become very essential to reduce the risk and foster trust among them and among this doing business cross-border. How can countries collaborate together to strengthen access to justice for SMEs operating across borders. I'll start also with you.
No, thank you for that. You know, I think Sierra Leone is an example wherein I would say cross-border trade is a lifeline for certain SMEs. If you look at Sierra Leone and its relationship with Liberia, actually, and then of course Sierra Leone and its relationship with Guinea, there are actually communities on both sides of the border where they use local currency from either country. Okay. You know, in Liberia, just across, you know, in some communities, they actually accept leones, which is the Sierra Leonean currency. And in Sierra Leone as well, you know, some accept the Liberian dollar. Same with Guinea, you know, and then and of course, so some parts, you know, take the Guinean franc, some parts take the leones. So because of those activities, you know, that is why for us, managing that relationship on both sides is really important, you know, because, you know, you need to facilitate cross-border trade. If you have followed some of the events in Sierra Leone and Guinea recently, there's what we call the Yenga crisis. So Yenga is a border town in the east of the country, and during the war years in Sierra Leone, Guinean troops occupied Yenga as a buffer. And so after the war came to an end in 2002, the Guineans have not moved back. And so basically the Guinean military is actually claiming Yenga as Guinean territory, right? 3 governments have been trying to resolve this issue. You know, sometimes things become tense, and then sometimes things have to be handled in capital. But the most significant impact of the Yenga crisis is not so much about who owns the territory, right? That is something that the various leaders have been trying to deal with, from President Kaba to Nkrumah, now President Bio, and now we are even considering, you know, taking this matter to the International Court of Justice, right? But that's for us who sit in the fancy offices, right? And then, you know, talk about the law. The real impact is on the local business people, you know. So now, those Sierra Leoneans who cannot trade across in Guinea, or those Guineans who cannot trade across in Sierra Leone, it's a problem, right? The effect of that, when these people can't sell their businesses, they can't pay fees for their kids to be in school, right? Or detention forces them away from their homes, right? And then what that leads to? Conflict, right? Because sometimes they feel like the state has not protected them, the law has not protected them, right? And so leads to tensions, you know, breakdown of law and order. We've seen those situations. So basically, the fact that, you know, an issue like that has not been resolved between 2 countries, yes, it's affected livelihoods, but now it's a source of conflict, not only between the 2 countries, but even internally. Yeah. You know, it's something that we have to deal with as a country. And so that is why, for us, we really believe that coordination across borders is really important. You know, if our nationals are trading across in Liberia or in Guinea, yes, it's in our interest that there are systems in those countries to protect them. If their nationals are trading across in our countries, it is in their interest as well that there are systems to protect them. And so the point is, you know, because they are different nationals, very likely when they have justice needs or when they have even disputes, you know, between or among themselves, there's going to be a challenge of which courts to go to, right? But if we have this range of services, you know, such as, you know, the community paralegals that we deploy, right? The mediation centers that will have operate in these communities, these will be really better mechanisms to manage that relationship and resolve any potential disputes. We really think that's one area as well where the justice hubs, you know, or the clinics can be really useful, because, you know, if we have the clinics or the hubs operating in there, we encourage people to engage with these hubs or these clinics, not because you have disputes, but because you have a justice need. And that justice need might just be wanting to know what the implications are if you want to go trade across the border. It might just be wanting to open a new line of business. It might just be that the traders across the border, they're spending so much time on this side of the border that they also probably want to set up a shop here, right? And then, this small business owner has a piece of land, right? What are the legal issues? What are the implications if they are to list that piece of land? So we encourage them, we want them to come to these hubs, bring these questions, get answers to these questions, use the answers to inform decision making and prevent disputes.
Thank you so much, dear Minister. Justice Hussam, I need you to answer this question in 1 minute.
In 1 second, and I'm going to make it in English, so it's going to be more...
Perfect.
We can do 7 points. First of all, facilitating access to finance by providing financial support and funding program to help SMEs expand into international markets. Number 2, providing training and advisory service to strengthen SME skills to improve their efficiency in international trade, assisting SMEs to expand into international market through participation in exhibition, conferences, and the trade agreements. Simplifying custom procedure and reducing tariff to promote international trade movement. Expanding governmental assistance to promote SMEs engagement in both export and import as well. Building strong communication networks between SMEs, larger enterprises, and governmental institutions. And finally, utilizing advanced technology to improve the efficiency of global trade and simplifying custom and tariff procedure. You can do that also to support and to foster the establishment and growth of SMEs in Egypt, and to facilitate business registration procedure and promote product through local and international exhibition and various marketing channels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, dear Minister, dear Sarah, for your insightful presentation and reaction to this. We will make sure to reflect your insights in our common research with HEAL. And with that, let us not be more late than this. And thank you so much for all your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think you have.
Yes, definitely.
So we need a picture.
All right. Better. Yes, thank you. So, conversations are still ongoing. This will happen with discussions are really meant to be for them to just go on and on and on. We're calling the moderators, we're calling all of the attendees that are in these two other discussions. The one on investing in justice was full. I mean, the room, we needed to add more chairs just because people wouldn't fit in there. And the other one on Spanish initiatives was also really interesting. So there, Oscar, just for you to know, because when we were discussing before the different initiatives in which Spain has been invested and that we could share and that you could actually come and visit, we are constantly actually organizing different study visits with a lot of countries. I've been in this ministry for 2.5 years, and so far it's been 17 different high-level delegations that we have received, hosted, and that we have shown all of the different initiatives that we have. Some of them that Oscar was showing, he'll come in a minute and do a little bit of a wrap-up, are Carpeta Justicia, and that is one of the most interesting initiatives. We didn't have time to comment it here in the auditorium. Oscar is actually the area manager for that. So imagine what happens when you basically offer the citizen tens, dozens of different links where the citizen can actually access some determined service. What happens? The citizen just ends up not knowing where to go. What we did with Carpeta Justicia is, because we know that there are digital divides within the digital world, we try to solve it also within the digital world. And with Carpeta Justicia, what we did is basically creating a one-stop shop. A one-stop shop that is customized for every single user, whether you're a citizen, whether you are a professional. And with that, what we achieve is that you can take a look at your electronic judicial file. All of the electronic judicial files that you have appear in Carpeta Justicia. You can download all the certificates that the Justice Administration is able to offer you. You can also take a look at the powers of attorney that you may have granted or that have been granted to you. You can access all the different previous appointment systems that the Justice Administration has. And this is not a minor thing in Spain, where, as I said, we're a quasi-federal country, so the different regions have their own systems. There is also something really interesting there, and this is because precisely of that fragmented competence. What used to happen is some lawyer, some professional, would have been summoned to a hearing in different parts of the country. So let's say Madrid and Barcelona, for example, and because the agendas, they were not coordinated, some of either the two hearings would need to be cancelled. And that will happen once and again and again and again. And that would mean a lot of money and time loss, because that hearing would need to be rescheduled for whatever the next available spot should be. What we did, and this is automatically incorporated into the Justice folder, into Carpeta Justicia, is now all the agendas are coordinated. So whenever there are two hearings that overlap, the last one to be added to the calendar is automatically rescheduled to the next available spot. These are some of the initiatives that my colleague Oscar has been explaining. He was sharing the session with Mrs. Maria Jesus Fraile, the Secretary of Government of our National High Courts of Appeal, which, as far as we know, is the only high national court of appeal in the world that has its criminal jurisdiction fully digitalized. And that is something that we also explain in these study visits. And the other session was on investing in justice. And let me give you just some figures about the investment that Spain's been doing in these last years in order to achieve, to become this international referent in digital transformation that we were discussing about. So when COVID came, you all know we had the Next Generation EU funds. And actually, what this ministry negotiated, what this ministry decided, it was that the biggest amount of funding from those Next Generation EU funds was going to be allocated to the DG for digital transformation. We got 410 million euros to invest just in the digital transformation of our justice. In the previous session, in one of the recommendations of the OECD, Sam was asking, so what happens if there is an election? Will the project continue? Will it not? Well, there, precisely because of the co-governance model that we have in Spain, what happens is that all of the different regions need to agree. And of course, not all of the different regions have the same political party in government. Are they going to collapse with each other when they actually want the same? No. And when this next generation EU funds came, what we also decided is, if we can reach a consensus where all of us agree what should be the main lines for the digital transformation of our justice, we can then split the money, we can then distribute it between the different autonomous regions, and so that each region, each autonomous community with competence can actually pursue those initiatives. Well, so far, this ministry has executed 100-point-something% of the next EU generation funding that was allocated. Okay, I see that the groups are coming back. We have the moderators to give some very brief conclusions, 2-3 minutes about what happened in the session. And the first moderator that I'm gonna invite is Oscar Palomo, who is area coordinator in the DG for Digital Transformation of the Administration of Justice here at the Ministry of the Presidency, Justice and Parliamentary Relations of Spain. So Oscar, please take the floor and tell us the conclusions of your session. Thank you so much.
I think I can use this one. So thank you very much for these words, Alejandro. Our session has been really interesting. Listening to Maria Jesus has been inspiring. I think we could see how the national court works 100% digitally. As Alejandro said, it is the court that works. Probably the most important court in the criminal jurisdiction in Spain, because they work 100% digitally. They work with very important cases of counterterrorism, financial fraud, and everything goes digital in the national court. So I think it's a very inspiring story. I invite you to see, to watch the video afterwards if you didn't have the opportunity to join us. And one of the main things that I would like to highlight is that they started some time ago. It's not that they started last year, 2-3 years ago. We have had a strong strategy from the ministry. We have been working with them collaboratively since 10-15 years ago. More 15 than 10, working on a digital way, starting with the jurisdictions that were, let's say, not as sensitive as the criminal jurisdictions. They started making everything digital. They started going digital already in 2011 approximately. They started getting everything digital in 2015, because that was the moment when everything had to be submitted digitally to courts. And then after time they started to work 100% digital. And now when the pandemic came 5 years ago, it was a horrible time, of course, but that was a turning point for them in digitalization, because that was the moment when they went for the digitalization of the criminal jurisdiction. And nowadays, as Maria Jesus explained in the session, in the showcase session, they work 100% digitally in the criminal jurisdiction. That includes also, as Alejandro mentioned before, granting access to the judicial files digitally, not only to the lawyers, to the representatives of the citizens, but also to the citizens themselves, of course, to the companies or other organizations too. They can have access to the files directly and to all the information through systems like Carpeta Justicia. Another thing I would like to highlight from the showcase session is that Maria Jesus mentioned is the team. They do a really great job in change management. They invest a lot of effort making internal working, creating internal working groups, and that's very important. It's not only about technology, but also about people, and they take this very seriously. So thank you very much, Maria Jesus, and again, thank you very much to all of you. I invite you to watch all the sessions, not only my session with Maria Jesus, but others, because this is a very inspiring forum. Thank you very much, Alejandro. Back to you.
Thank Thank you so much, Oscar. I would like to invite now to take the floor to Cristina Lorenzo, who is moderating the session on investing in justice. Thank you so much. Cristina, please.
Good evening to everyone. I'm going to speak in Spanish. If you want to take a minute to put your micro on.
Well, the round table or the session I had the honor to moderate generate pretty high expectations, both on account of the topics and the distinguished participants. Unfortunately, we could not take questions at the end of the session because we didn't have time, but it was a very interesting session since our panelists had enough time to convey their expertise and the comments they had prepared. First of all, Mr. Reza Laiji from the OGD brought the preliminary results of the ongoing work in the Justice Action Coalition. The paper or the study is focusing mostly in Colombia and Canada. And we were given a flavor of the first figures on a first round of result gathering or data gathering to launch action in Colombia mostly. But in general terms, we heard about their working methodology that involves national and international stakeholders. From the Colombian perspective, the task force analyzed the three main types of problems to address in the justice system: in the civil area, the criminal area, and a specific chapter on armed conflict. And from that perspective, they analyzed possible causes and the influence certain cases had in these justice hiccups. Starting from this foundation, the project will analyze the true cost of justice to make it crystal clear how much these problems will cost, not only to citizens, but also to the entities that are party to each case, including the public administration. On the side of Canada, we heard that their preliminary findings could or related mostly to violent crimes and domestic violence. The methodology they expect to follow is exactly the same as in Colombia, and they will continue to work on the subject. Then we heard Casey McKinnon from the Canadian government to tell us about the framework of the study. And we heard that it was sometimes complicated to share data reliably. For instance, something that we will relate to difficulties among different Canadian provinces in terms of, well, the forms of communication. They had some studies conducted in Canada as a national survey that could benefit from some updating, and also some data could be contaminated since they were gathered right after the years of a world pandemic and lockdown. So we addressed several interesting factors. For instance, the economic burden of justice, particularly an analysis on minorities in terms of race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, And other findings include the financial cost to public administrations. Next, we heard Dr. Fishit from the Thailand government, who pointed out the specific costs, because the study in Thailand predates the one in Canada, and it had already been completed under a similar methodology, and the calculated cost of justice in Thailand had been calculated to be 5.6% of the country GDP. So considering these figures, they adopted measures, implemented some changes, and tried to strike a balance between law enforcement and rehabilitation, placing specific emphasis on services to crime survivors or surviving crime victims. We heard about a project, an ongoing project in Thailand. It's called Restarting Academy. It works as a sandbox for social reintegration or reinsertion that I personally found profoundly interesting, added to other legal initiatives being implemented in Thailand. During the second part of the session, Fernando Morani showcased the financing justice framework drafted by the organization, and we heard that the report was recently published, so now available, with 4 financing ambitions, 7 recommendations for public policies, and 5 more chapters. And last, Rose McLaren from the Moss Foundation stated how lucky they feel about being a part of this cooperation among organizations that is truly yielding positive results for a public service, nonetheless, public service that costs money. So I will now give the floor to the next speaker to deliver the conclusions of the next group.
We will now move to the closing ceremony. Our director will speak in Spanish. Keep your headsets. Just a few seconds to say good afternoon again. There's still some daylight. I hope you enjoy Madrid. I hope you can stay during the weekend enjoying the city. We had enjoyed 3 days where the Ministry of the Presidency, Justice and Parliamentary Relations has been proud to having co-organized this event with the OECD in an intensive manner. We believe in multilateralism, cooperation, and the importance of justice for democratic societies. As it was said by the Secretary of State, they should defend minorities and the most vulnerable groups. No one can be left behind. Societies that face new challenges, fake news, disinformation, social, economic, and migration changes require a justice system that responds to meet the public needs, creating a legal certainty that might guarantee investments and the economic performance of the country. A justice system that is a referent in digital transformation so that AI models or new technologies have an ethical and human dimension of respect of human rights. In this type of events are useful to get to know each other, to speak face to face, and to be closer. This allows us to collaborate. The real work starts now. Everything you have dreamt of about the ideas we discussed, everything we have thought about working together, please let us do it. I hope we will see each other soon. I hope that colleagues will become friends with joint projects that will allow to improve citizens' lives. I hope we can go on collaborating everywhere in the world for all citizens, all companies, organizations, and together we will get further. I hope this desire will become a reality. I hope we see each other in Turkey in the next meeting of the Global Roundtable. So thank you. Thank you to the organizers, to the technical teams, people that are translating, all the speakers that participated, all the organizations, but especially all of you. Without you, this wouldn't make sense or wouldn't be possible. Thank you.
Now, please, Tatiana, you may take the floor.
All right, you've made it. So thank you so much to all of you for being here today, being here yesterday, and for those of you who also joined the high-level leaders dialogue. So yes, we really appreciate your commitment, your leadership, your partnership, but also your perseverance, frankly, because I don't know about you. I'm sure you are at least as tired as I am after all of these discussions, but also satisfied with the honesty, with the concreteness, and also future orientation of our conversations. And I'd like to begin by thanking again our Spanish partners, the Ministry of Justice of Spain, IEC, of course, but also our partners who helped organize the Justice Leaders Dialogue, OGP, and Pathfinders. So this was an amazing journey over the past 3 days. We have looked at justice through many lenses, be that trust, be that people's access, digital transformation, data, SMEs, environmental risks, and the rule of law. But of course, you may remember that the main conclusion of these days and of the conversations that is justice is a core public infrastructure for our economies and for our democracies. So over the past few days, we celebrated 10 years anniversary of the Global Roundtable as a platform for honest exchange, but also for joint learning. A high-level dialogue set out a clear political vision to go forward, that justice systems must be people-centered. And again, this is something that is really dear to the OECD heart, and I know to the heart of many of our partners and many of our countries. So I'm so proud. But then the justice systems should be data-driven and future-ready, and should serve as a driver of trust and shared prosperity. We've discussed the implementation of the OECD recommendation, shared practical experience, but also started to converge of what good practices could look like. So what actually makes them so good, and how we know that they are really working, that they are generating results. So Mary Beth yesterday mentioned some of the future directions for the OECD work. Also, there was actually an excellent session on the implementation. I hope you were able to be part of that. And maybe just to highlight briefly a few points, we would like to invite all of the countries, if you haven't been engaged with us closely, to please use us as much as possible to help you drive people centricity in your justice systems. In the OECD, we will continue working on global knowledge hub, global infrastructure, practical tools. You've seen all the implementation toolkit, but of course, we are just at the beginning of the journey, and will continue working on developing different tools to support countries. Data and indicators, again, there were excellent discussions. Just an important announcement that we will continue supporting countries in reporting and monitoring the SDG 16.3.3 on access access to justice and rule of law to leave no one behind, with our co-custodian agencies, UNODC and UNDP. The next call for data from the member countries of the UN, which I believe all of the countries are here, will be at the end of this month, so at the end of November. For those countries who have conducted legal needs surveys, are conducting legal needs surveys, or thinking about this and also have some good practices to report, please use this opportunity, because this will be summarized in the global report on the implementation of the SDGs and, of course, SDG 16. We will also continue working with the Justice Action Coalition on data and benchmarking and the State of People-Centered Justice report. What is important about this report is that it will serve as a baseline then for the countries to see the progress that they are making, that you are making when it comes to the implementation of the framework for people-centered justice. Of course, on the Council recommendation, we also have to report to the Council, to the OECD Council, on the progress that countries are making. So this report will be really an important starting point to implement this kind of joint monitoring. And more broadly, you may know that the OECD has a set of public integrity indicators. So we are working with our colleagues on judicial integrity indicators, and will also be developing, and actually currently are developing, broader justice governance indicators. And please stay tuned. You will be hearing from us shortly. So direct country support, you've heard from many countries. And then, of course, networks, partnerships, and visibility of the work that you do when it comes to people-centered justice. We will work with many of our partners on increasing visibility of the outcomes of the Roundtable, contributing to the Justice Action Coalition. And I'd like to thank countries that participate in the coalition, but also support the work of the coalition, the Netherlands and Germany. And then, of course, connecting to thematic work on different topics that we've touched upon today. I'm, of course, pleased to confirm, if you haven't heard, that the next Roundtable will be hosted by Turkey in Istanbul. And that meeting will be really important to actually take stock of the implementation. So not just restate our commitments, but really see where we've come when it comes to the implementation and impact. So big thanks again to Spain, to all of the participating countries, to everyone who has worked behind the scenes to make this Roundtable a success. And of course, I actually really would like to thank the teams. So from the Spanish team, and I will be forgetting many names, and I apologize for that, but I'd like to acknowledge, of course, Minister Manuel, Aitor, Alejandro, Belen, Fabiola, Mari, and Roberto, ICT colleagues, and again, everyone who's actually been making this event a success. And of course, the OECD team. I actually haven't seen my team in the past few months because they were working day and night and actually making this happen. And I really am appreciative of all of the efforts. So it's Marianne, Melissa, Maika, Chiara, Sabrina, Chiara, Chloe, Amr, Maria, Martina, Frank, Elisa, Marta, and many others. And of course, my boss, Mary Beth, who was here in the past 2 days and also led this high-level engagement. So big thanks again to all of you. Look forward to seeing you in Istanbul. Look forward to be connected with you in the meantime. And again, of course, the OECD stands ready to support you. But before I close, actually, I understand that there is a last surprise from our Spanish hosts. Thank you.
So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to host you for these 3 days. We've welcomed you in the wonderful space of the Royal Collections Gallery, a museum that is just 3 years old, but that is one of the most now recognizable museums in the country, that is the third if we take into account how many World Heritage sites we have, just after China and Italy. We really hope to have given you what you wanted. I can assure you that we've given you the best that we had. And just as a little bit of a memoir, let's play now, please, the last summary video. With this, the summit will be over. Thank you so much.
The 10th OECD Global Roundtable on Equal Access to Justice concludes 3 days of intensive work, marking a milestone in the international debate on the future of justice. Through collaboration between the OECD and the Ministry of the Presidency, Justice and Parliamentary Relations, Madrid has become a global meeting point for sharing solutions, experiences, and commitments. After an opening that gathered high-level representatives from more than 40 countries, the second day delved into digital innovation and the value of data. Today, the closing session has focused on people, redesigning judicial systems, measuring their impact, and moving towards more human, inclusive, and sustainable models. 3 days in which Spain has reaffirmed its role as an international reference, charting the path towards a justice system that is more accessible, modern, and aligned with the challenges of our time.